this isn't even a real estate story.
No, we're back to stories.
Yeah, this
Stories
is great.
with
This is great.
Peter.
So it was New Year's Eve. I lived in Manhattan, and I was really good friends. I went to physical therapy. I had a reconstruction done on my shoulder. I mean, my physical therapist, Dave Kramer. Shout out to you out in California now.
Dave Kramer.
Dave Kramer in the house, right? So the best part is he invites us to this party up like Penthouse or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, I had a porn stash.
Oh my gosh.
So picture me walking around.
I don't know if I want to picture that.
But the best part is, like, at some point, we got our hands on those boas, those feather boas.
Hold on, time out. For the public, Peter is a good, I don't know, 7'12" or something crazy, like
Yeah.
6'9", 6'8", 6'7", something. Huge.
Right.
So
Huge.
just picture this.
Yeah.
Put that in the context.
So the best part about this Dave Kramer story is that now we're walking around this party, New Year's Eve, like, it's like everybody's drinking champagne the whole night. And somehow there's like a bowl of M&Ms and candy. And I'm walking around with this boa.
And a porn stash.
The porn stash. And we still laugh about it. I'm like, Dave, I'd love to get your version of this story, because it was like one of these legendary nights where it's like, we didn't, like, I mean, we're just going crazy, right? It's just, one of those things where you walk into somebody and they're like, oh, you're like, I know you. And I'm like, and you're like, oh, New Year's Eve at this party.
How do you know me is the question.
How do you know?
Right.
Exactly. So anyway, it's always creating kind of, what is it that people say? It's like they don't remember what you said or what you did, but they'll always remember how you made them feel.
How you say it, how you make them feel when you say it.
Yeah. So it's that's the beauty of these things. I'm not, it's just, we're just kind of BSing as we're getting started, but I haven't thought about that. It's like, that's what you do to me. You bring out these stories that I haven't not thought about in 20 some odd years. It must have been like 23 at the time.
And those stories are what are like the stepping stones to today, right? The stories of the past are what leads to conversations of today, which is why they're always so important.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I don't know. There's, we're not recording, are we?
We are definitely recording.
Hey, what's up, guys?
That's gonna be a blooper reel. Wait, we're not recording, are we?
Yeah, no. Put that one out there somewhere. Somebody's gonna appreciate this.
Always gonna like this story.
No, it's just it's funny because I worked on Wall Street and had a job. I thought I was very good at it. I was definitely, it's one of the things that people look for is somebody that's all in, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's I always think of it. Somebody said this to me like recently, within the last couple of years, but they're like, you will literally die on the sword, right? And it's like, if you believe in something, you'll do it to the point of like you're the last passenger on the Titanic.
Yeah.
They're like, no, it's the greatest ship ever.
Right.
Like, like, like the band's going like,
we're starting our underwater tour now.
Yeah. And it's like, no, it's still, no, we're going to recover, It's like, so, it's the blessing and the curse, right? It's, you're all in, but at some point you have to pull the plug.
Yeah.
Right. And I was having a conversation with another agent that I had worked at, Keller Williams. And it was just like, culture is everything and who you align with. And you and I talk about this. People that don't know, we're spiritual people. We listen to the same things. It's the mantra. I was just kind of joking with you before that I had to delete my news apps.
Yeah.
Because it's a distraction. It didn't matter. It's funny because it was my coach, my real estate coach in the Tom Ferry program was telling me about this guy, Peter Zanaya or something.
Mm-hmm.
And, never heard the name before, but we
Right.
were talking about something about China and the collapse that's going to happen in China. And then I looked him up on, he was like, look him up, watch some of his videos. And I'm like, I've already seen these videos because,
Right.
the Joe Rogan interview.
Right, but didn't know who you were.
I had no idea who this guy was. I was
Right.
just like, I'm blurting out information like China's fucking, talking about this inverted pyramid that's, based on demographics and age and all this other stuff. And all of a sudden it's like, yeah, we're talking the same thing.
Right. It reminds you of when you called yourself the REM of real estate. Everybody loves you and everybody knows who you are, but they have no idea who he is. They're like, I love that guy. That's who? That's Peter? I love that guy.
Yeah, it was just like, it's like all these songs that people love. And it's like, it's not about me, right? It's, I'm sitting here staring at this question
Spiels.
sheet. Yeah. And it's like all, talk all about you, who, what, how, and why, right? And there's parts to it, but it's not about me, right? It's about the people that I've surrounded myself with, and my wife's a prime example of it. She's such a nice person, right? Like you
Yeah.
meet her within 5 seconds, she's like your best friend,
Uh-huh.
and she's telling you stories, and it's like, oh, do you need anything? And it's
Yeah.
like, it's like that's cool, right? But we don't we don't have a lot of close friends, and I put you in that category, and it's like, um, that's something that's special. You know, a lot of people know you, right?
Yeah.
And there's the close people, and like we were just talking about this. I don't know if it was recording, but it's like people don't give a shit about what you said or what you did. They only care about how you made them feel.
Right.
And somebody was trying to sell me. They were trying to say, "Hey, why don't you come over? Bring your brokerage, bring all your
Mm-hmm.
agents, this and that." And I'm like, "Listen, we're just that's not who we are."
Right.
It's just I don't want to be that person. It's
Right.
like, oh, do you know how many lives you can save? And I'm like, I know there's this anonymity about being in a 12-step program, but I'm like, those are the people that I want to help.
Right.
Right. And
Right.
it's like I'm not chasing money,
Right.
like
You're not a
money.
commodity. You're a provider. Right. I
Right.
think that's a big difference.
Right. And it's like helping people. Like, what level do you want to help people? Because
Yeah.
if it's like only because it benefits your bank account, that's bullshit to me.
Right. It's never gonna last. It's not sustainable.
Right? Like that's not real to me. Yes, there's a part of it. Be exceptional at what you do.
Yeah.
But it's like if that's the only thing that you're doing nothing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's like that's where the challenge is.
Yeah.
That's it's you don't get me, right? Like you're trying to sell me something that I don't want.
Right. Well, see, that's what these questions are all about, right? Because to that adage, nobody wants to be sold, but
Right.
everybody wants to buy, right? And I think as sales professionals, that our job is to not sell somebody, but to provide something for somebody, whether it's whether it's a commodity in itself or a value add, right? That's going to change their lives. That's going to help them create value for others. And I think that's what separates us, and that's what we do. And that's really what these questions are about. So these questions are geared towards providing an advantage to our buyers out there, right? So as we get into this show here, the advisor's advantage, the advantage that we're trying to provide is something that's going to separate us, whether it's myself on the mortgage side or yourself on the real estate side, from the competition or from those that don't have the same mindset as us, don't look at this business the same way we do, that are focused on units and not families. So, as I ask these questions, tell us all about you. I want you to tell the audience who you are, because I know who you are and I think you're awesome. That's why you're here. What you do differently than others, how you do it that is successful, and really something we've already answered, I think, why you do it.
So thank you for kind of all those questions. But one of the things that always kind of I think you mentioned the REM thing, but it's one of the compliments that I get every once in a while. It's like making something that is difficult seem very easy,
Yes.
right? And then trying to replace yourself, right? And all of a sudden it doesn't work out that way, right? And it's not because you're better than anybody. It's
Mm-hmm.
just, you just care more, or
Yeah.
you're willing to do something that, oh, it doesn't work on my schedule, right? Like somebody called before we started filming, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I want to talk to you. I'm in the middle of about start something, and
Right.
this is going to require more than like 30 seconds of your time because I really want to get to know you. And, it's funny. It's somebody that's looking for work remotely, and they're moving to California, right? It's like we were talking about this. I met some kid that was 22 years old, and the greatest thing that ever happened to him was getting kicked out of school because he didn't want to get the vaccine shot. And I'm not saying, hey, listen, this isn't about whether or
Yes.
not you got the shot or anything, but he's like, hey, listen, I want to find out a little bit more about it, right? And if that means that I can't go to school, like I'm not going to school, right?
Right.
It's like, fast forward 2 years, the guy's flipped, 22-year-old kids flipped four or five houses. And I'm like, it could have been the greatest gift that he ever got.
100%.
Meanwhile, he's talking about how his friends are, doing desk jobs, which is, I work desk jobs too. I
Right.
still feel like I work a desk job, at least for 4 hours a day.
Right.
And,
But definitely doesn't provide the value or freedom
right. And
of
the
entrepreneurship.
beauty is when you find that silver lining, right? It's, I was listening to, two people had told, me personally going through my father-in-law right now, who's, he got, I guess, acute living, whatever that means. It's kind of a fancy
Mhm.
way of saying not something good.
Yeah.
And then somebody else that, had, I found out somebody that I was very close with has brain tumor, right? And of course, if you listen to the 5 a.m. call today, it wasn't Sharon, but a regular speaker talking about how he lost two family members this week.
Mm.
And it's like, we don't get to take anything with us,
Right.
right? So you might as well leave it all on the field,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what do like, not that you want to be, we were talking about Genghis Khan before, not that we're going to remember anything that we did or whatever, but, like leaving a sudden impact that could help people, right? And I don't ever, like, somebody asks, what do you do, right? Like, the dream of going on vacation. Tony Robbins uses one where it's like, if I say I'm a stockbroker, fucking people don't look at you the same way.
Right.
And he goes, "What do you really do? What's a fun way to say the same thing?" And
Right.
it's like, I'm a treasure hunter,
Right.
right? I try to find value for you, and and find you like these hidden gems. And I had to think about that. It's always like the dream component is changing where people dream, right? Like literally the pillow that they put their head on at night, right? So yesterday I was like thinking of it in totally different ways because we're always kind of like trying to fine tune even the most minute things. And I'm not one for details when it
Right.
comes to, I'm a dreamer, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
an entrepreneur at heart. And it was like getting people the dream of the American dream of home ownership, right? But that's not even me.
Right.
It's like, I want to get you in a home. I want you to be a homeowner. But the reality is, it's like, I want you to dream of generational wealth,
Yes.
right? Like I had, we did a deal last year. Michelle, thank you. You're wonderful. But she didn't think she could afford the house, and she just literally wanted to have a house um, before she turned a certain age. It's like she's like, I don't want this to be a money pit, right? It's like,
Right.
you get invited to all like the housewarming, the New Year's Eve party, and I'm like, New Year's Eve, like I'm not, I don't do that, right?
Right.
It's We were joking about the M and
Right.
M's and the boa,
Right. And that's why you don't do that anymore.
right? So the reality is like, it's caring about people. I always, this is where it's always fun because the test, I write a lot of cards, a lot of handwritten cards. And it's like the test is always to have more U's than I's
Yes.
on that card, right? And it's
Right.
like, if you have too many I's, like I'll rip them up and I'll be like,
Right.
ah, let's, and you're not talking about
Of
long paragraphs. You're talking about 2 or 3
Yeah,
sentences that
100%.
you fucking rock. You're
If I
awesome.
start 2 sentences with I in a row, I'm like, scribble. We need a new one. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not even that. It's like, are you just trying to sell yourself, or are you just, it's kind of like that's what's fun. It's
Right.
when I drop off like a little pop by, right? And somebody's like, "Oh, come on in, like I'm baking something."
Yeah.
And then, you have this really fancy thing before. These were like what are they? The mocktails,
Yes.
right? Like
Right. Right.
somebody's in the kitchen, they're like,
Whipping
pouring,
them up.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, little tea leaves or
Uh
like
huh.
whatever, and I'm like, all of a sudden I got this concoction, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's fucking great. Like,
Uh huh.
how do I bottle this? Can I
Right.
sell this? And that's going back to the how do you make somebody
I
feel,
was just gonna say that.
right? And
Took
it's
that out
like,
of my head.
and these are like, especially when you get to the point where you've been doing the business for over a decade,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now you've seen kids that they
Grow.
think that you gave them a house, right? Like
Right.
they don't realize their parents are the ones that are paying for it. But
Right.
now they're like, yeah, Vinny's turning 22. We want to help we want to help him buy a house, right? And
Yeah.
it's that's like, that's where the magic happens,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Because somebody that you've known, when they were 15
Right.
or 12 or whatever, and you're
Has
like,
now
really?
reached that age where they're
Yeah,
the adult, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
now they're the client.
yeah. And you're just like, what this is all about, right? And
Yeah.
it's just and it's not about billboards for me. It's not about,
Right.
I love these podcasts. I love my YouTube channel, but it's like, it's how many things can you talk about that haven't already been talked about, right? It's we were talking about the Chat GPT, right? If you haven't used it, it's phenomenal.
Right.
It's but it kind of takes what does it genuinely mean, right? So here's a little for all your realtors out there that are getting a listing. 2 questions that I have to ask my clients is, what are the 3 things that you're going to miss about this house, and what are the 3 things that you love about this house?
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see that you pull on the emotional strings,
Yeah.
and it's more than a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. It's a place that you can have a cigar in the
Right.
afternoon and watch a sunset or watch a sunrise and drink coffee and read your morning paper. And people
Wait,
are like, wow, like that's what I'm looking for.
here's a question: has that
Yeah,
ever cost you a sale? When,
absolutely.
right? When you pull on those emotional strings, people are like, you know what? I do love this house. I love this house too much. I can't sell this house.
Well, it's not even the sale of the house, right? Because we do a lot of estate and what do you call them? Not distressed, but
Mm-hmm.
certain underlying circumstances of why you either want to buy or sell a house, right? And one of the things was I was like, oh, this is great. I'm like, would you mind if I made an offer on your house? Because they had a number in their head.
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you thinking? I'm like, you know what? My mom grew up on the Jersey Shore. She lives on a 2-floor, 2-story home, and I'll buy this and she'll still be by the water and this and that. And they call me back 24 hours later and they're like, we listened to what you said. We're like, for the same reasons that you want to buy this house, we're not going to sell it. We're going to keep this. And you know what? Because I tell them, I'm so honest with people. I'm
Yeah.
like, how many people sold their houses in Spring Lake for $3 million 10 years ago?
Yeah. That could
That
have
was a
tripled it right now.
that was a family house. The
Yeah.
grandkids came over, like
Yeah.
everything. And it's like, it's a $10 million house now. You
Yeah.
can never get that experience again. And me personally, I lived in Asbury Park. I had a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo. We had 2 parking spots in ground, underground parking spots. So we never had to deal with any of that stuff. And because of our underlying circumstances and the school systems, not to knock anything on the Asbury Park school systems, but it was either going to be public school or we had to find another house with a higher graded school system.
Mm-hmm.
And we wound up having to sell this condo that when we bought it, it was like, wasn't even on the market. It was like the penthouse coming from New York City. I just felt like kind of like this was it, floor to ceiling windows.
Yeah.
And, we had to sell it. We go to Asbury all the time and literally we see it. We know the owner. Chris is a great guy. He's an attorney. He loves it. He's every reason that we loved it,
He
right?
loves it.
And he loves it, right? And it's all fine. It's all fine,
Mm-hmm.
but there's kind of that remorse, like
Yeah.
I wish I hadn't sold it. I wish I
Mm-hmm.
had different means to keep that, rent it out, and still
Right.
be able to buy the house. But we needed money for a down payment at the time. We didn't really qualify.
Yeah.
It was a different
Carrying
point.
both, right?
Yeah, it was a different point in our life. Um, and then, we had this opportunity to buy something in Portugal. Same thing. Like, I remember sitting down with a guy. He's like, I'm like, I really like, I love these. It's like 5, 6 different buildings, but we really want ocean views.
Right.
It's like, well, they're not on the market yet, or they've already been spoken for. And then we got this phone call saying, or a text message or WhatsApp saying, hey, listen, somebody just backed out of a deal.
Nice.
So he jumped on it.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the problem: it costs $60,000 more
Ah,
than. But in my mind,
it's worth it.
it's a makeup, it's a do
Yeah.
over for the Asbury Park condo that we loved, and we're just really really
Just
excited.
slightly farther of a commute.
It's farther, but it's a lifestyle,
Yeah.
right? It's So what's fun about like when you dream and this is the one challenge that I've always told people. It's like dream bigger. Whatever your dream is, dream bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And, the condo, like plenty of people I know have condos in Portugal in the Algarve. I've never been to the Algarve.
Okay.
And I sent a lot of money over just to lock up the deal. And then I get to the Algarve and I'm like, you know what? This is a pretty cool place.
Right.
I see why people love this. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, and then, the story just kind of builds on itself. It's almost like a fairy tale. It's, the first person, again, the New Yorker in me or living in New York or having a little bit of exposure to New York City real estate was I asked the guy to sell me the condo or I guess he would be like the Hobnadian salesperson.
Right.
I was like, any celebrities, buying in this thing? And he's like, actually, the appointment after you is the goalkeeper for the Portuguese team. I got to meet him, even though he didn't,
Nice.
speak a lick of English. Rui Patricia, for anybody that knows that. And I'm like, I shook his hand, and
Hmm.
this guy was so embarrassed because like I was going up to this, this titan of
Right.
you know Portuguese soccer. He was the goalkeeper when they won the European Championship, and I just walked up to him, like talked to him like I would anybody,
Nice.
and I just it was just kind of like we're going to be neighbors, and Amber still to this day she's like, but he doesn't have an ocean view. He's got a
Nice.
side view.
He can have all the trophies, all the accolades, but he's got a side view,
Yeah.
which gives you the advantage. And that is what you kind of touched on already. What the next question here is, tell us something we should know that would give us the advantage when trying to buy a house. And I think you kind of touched on it a little bit, but I want you to elaborate on that. What could you offer any first time home buyer that would give them an advantage over another buyer?
Well, the whole thing is having your ducks in a row, right? Like a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people got into real estate when, you know, everybody was making money just because you offer 40, 50,000 over ask. Gonna waive all those
Right.
contingencies, oh, it doesn't appraise, don't worry about
Right. It
it.
doesn't
Like,
matter.
it doesn't matter, right? And again, going back to what I call like the go-go housing market of, the collapse that
2006.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's just like the kamikaze ninja loans and all that other good stuff. And it's just having your ducks in a row. And one of the things is like treating other realtors with respect, right? It's can't tell you how many deals I've gotten. Not
Mm-hmm.
that we did anything shady. It's just like apples to apples. We're the same offer,
Right.
knowing that I could get a deal to the closing table because, kind of explaining who my clients are, their contractors or whatever it is. But if you're a first time home buyer, it's like kind of explaining the process. And sometimes where it gets difficult is when you're like, say, a VA loan as opposed to an FHA loan
Mm-hmm.
versus competing against conventional loans. It's, yeah, okay, it's a tougher thing. Like,
Yeah.
when I tell you that like for a FHA or a VA loan that send love stories, right? People can relate to stories. It was a VA loan. It was a VA owner selling to somebody that was getting a VA loan.
Okay.
Makes sense, right?
Sure.
And there's this whole transfer of thing, but it's only good for the amount that the original owner owes.
Oh. Okay.
Right. So there's some caveats there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like people talk about it, but then it's like it's not exactly
Right.
right. Right.
Exactly.
So one of the requirements was it was in a condominium development, and they were saying that the deck had to be repainted in the middle of January,
Oh, that's
and
easy to do. Yeah, that's easy to do,
right,
right?
but this is like there's snow on the ground,
Right.
right, and all this other
And-
stuff, right, and nobody wanted to do it.
right.
And I said, the seller didn't want to do it because God forbid something happened, there's going to be a liability issue to it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the buyer wasn't going to do it because it wasn't his property or whatever, right? And it was like literally as easy as just finding a handyman
Right.
to go out there and paint the damn thing.
Shovel some snow. Put
Right.
some
And,
paint
and
down.
that's literally what we did. We shoveled snow and we painted the thing. Then we had the person, I guess the appraiser, right?
Come back at
Come
yeah.
back and okay,
Yeah.
you're good to go, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and that's like kind of one of the. I can't tell you how many times I'm at a CO office in Eatontown, Long Branch, West Long Branch,
Right.
just getting stuff done for people that otherwise, because I work with a lot of people that are English as a second language that don't understand the process, and
Right.
from there, again, this goes back to the making difficult processes seem
Smoother. Right.
seem
And easier.
smoother,
Right.
right? And it's like anything's possible. I remember Frank DeFelice. He's the one that taught me the first time around when I first got a real estate license, like I don't know, back in 2001 or some crazy thing, and I did it for like a week.
Right.
And he always tells this thing is about the what's that office you build new the patent office, right?
Okay.
And he was saying, at one point there was a president that wanted to eliminate the patent office because he thought that everything that would ever be created had already
Mm-hmm.
been done.
Okay.
It's like that's when the ninja loans, right?
Right.
It was like, oh, you can't afford a house. Hold on a second.
Don't worry
Because he's
about
like,
it.
and he would tell
We've
this.
got a product for you.
Yeah, yeah, and
Oh,
he
yeah.
would tell you these stories about the patent office, and it would just kind of relate. I mean, that was part of the problem was that people were getting loans that shouldn't have been getting
Yeah.
loans. But I always tell people, I'm like, we did a first time, not a first time, a home buyer seminar yesterday in Portuguese, and people come and they're like, they have no idea how to buy a house, right?
Mm-hmm.
English, they're here as a foreigner. Some people tax ID loans, some of them are going to be Social Security, kind of standard FHA. We were talking about this off camera too. Like, what's the difference of getting a HELOC or a refi cash out,
Right.
and the pros and cons of that, right? It's like
Oh,
the
yeah.
fact that we're even having these conversations. Like, and these aren't even like, there's a bit of a real world scenario that we're kind of exploring, but this isn't what normal people talk about, right? Like, they're talking about, oh, like Joe Biden, you see the documents, oh, I can't believe it's just like Trump, or like
Right.
it's nothing like Trump, right? And it's
Right.
like, no, I'm talking about
Real estate
yeah,
and
HELOCs,
HELOCs.
refis, like refi cash outs, and it's like again, going back to the home, like the dream of home ownership is number one, right? But then there's the dream of generational wealth, or
Right.
making money while you're sleeping, and I've seen so many people do it that it's kind of a blueprint, right? And everybody thinks you see, it's you need money. Like, I saw some video. It's like you need money to make money, right? That's what rich people say,
Right.
right? Like, but how did they get rich, right? Because somehow they had to get there, right? And that's the beauty, is that there's a lot of wealth in real estate if you want to do it. And again, some people don't want to be landlords, and I totally respect that. My father was one of those people that never wanted to be a landlord. And it's like, then there's other people like I used to work for Pat Fasano in Asbury Park, and he was the guy. Like, his story is freaking interesting. 18-year-old kid that bought his first house up in by Rutgers, and you can see him with his big old hair, and he's in a local newspaper article. 18-year-old kid buying a house, renovating it, and he renovated. It's like I think he's like probably in his 60s or close to his 60s now.
Mm-hmm.
He's just been in real estate his whole entire life. Like, that's just his passion.
Definitely his entire working life. I mean, 18 to 60. That's a lot of real estate transactions.
It is, but it gets fun because it doesn't. It's not. People overthink it.
Mm-hmm.
It's he has a great business model. He partners to kind of diversify some of the risk a lot of the times, and it's just you don't have to do it all in one. Home ownership. What was this kid telling me yesterday? He goes, real estate hacks.
Right.
How to buy a property with paying nothing.
Everybody's got a hack for something.
It's a hack, though, right?
Yeah.
So we go into the USDA with some sort of a seller financing
Yep.
and a
You do
government
that.
grant,
100%.
and you can do that, right?
Mhm.
And then what was his hack? Finding a multifamily that, like, a 4 unit where he could move in. He's 22. He has
Yeah.
zero like roots to anywhere, so he'll move anywhere in the
Right.
country to move into a 4 family and
Mhm.
have the other 3 units pay for
Right.
it,
Or
right?
and do an FHA loan at 3.5% down.
Right. And again, if you can get some sort of seller financing, you really
Mhm.
aren't bringing that much to the table. And he's just like, that's all I'm looking for, right? And he's like,
Yeah.
he's patient, and
Smart.
it's just like, again, anything's possible. Sit down. I can't tell you how many people is like, oh, like, thankful, like I did anything. I'm like, I just helped. Like, I'm
You're the
happy to help.
facilitator, but you're also the guy bringing the deal to the table, right?
Yeah.
Providing the house that's going to create those emotions and those memories and laughter and dreams and those family moments. So, I mean, I think we both do a lot more for families out there than we may realize, right? Because it's our normal job, right? We're sitting here having normal conversation about HELOCs and cash out refis because that's just what we do. But to
Mhm.
somebody else, that's a game changer. When you're restructuring somebody's debt, when you're changing their financial liabilities or obligations in life that are causing such great stress, and you're eliminating that and you're helping them build wealth because of the appreciation factors of the home, you're using that house as an appreciating asset. I mean, that's a value that not many people realize we provide, you know? And there's so many professionals out there, so many real estate agents, so many mortgage professionals. The question next on my list here
Oh boy.
is, why should they choose you over any other professional, Peter?
Listen, at the end of the day, you're going to choose who's right for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not right for everybody. And I remember, we'll start with that, right? So I'm totally not selling myself here. So I remember a divorce attorney, who, we sat down, we had coffee, we had a great conversation. She goes, Pete, she goes, I love to refer you. I know that you're good at what you do,
Yeah.
right? It's always, she said to me, she goes, but most of my clients are female. You're 6'6". You have a beard. You're very intimidating. Like,
Mm-hmm.
not intimidating in that regard, but it just,
But you're a
they're
massive man.
they're
Yes.
getting out of a relationship. I always say, when I used to go door knocking early in my career, it was like I'd have to stand 8 feet away from the door,
Right.
right? Versus I'd bring one of my colleagues, petite, female, whatever, and
Uh-huh.
ring the doorbell. Hey, how are you doing? This and that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, hey, like I'm on a scavenger hunt. Like, it's like, what do you mean you're on a scavenger hunt? Why are you ringing my doorbell? It's like, it's pretty simple. It's like, I have one of my clients that's looking for a house in this development. Do you happen to have any, know any neighbors that are looking to sell? Right? And it's like, you'd be surprised that it doesn't normally, like, anything come out of it, but when it does,
Yeah.
and you're like, okay, so I don't want to name drop this person, right? Quasi spy, but
He's
the
watching you.
she should be watching me. No, but it's it was like I asked them something as easy, like as non-threatening as, like, do you have to get a permit to expand your driveway?
Yeah.
Because they had an expanded driveway, and they're like, why are you asking? I'm like, well, my colleague, or my client, is buying a house in your neighborhood, and I noticed that you had an expanded driveway, and we just wanted to know, like, do we have to get permits or whatever it is? And he's like, well, we didn't,
Right.
like, and I'm like, oh, okay, like, and I'm like, thank you for your time, and he goes, oh, can I get your business card? He's like, we're thinking about selling. So 6 months later, I get the phone call,
Nice.
and it's just, this was like 7 years ago, and it's great because not only did they wind up selling, they actually moved into something that they had inherited, so I didn't get a buy side, which is fine, whatever. I was grateful for the opportunity. Then they referred me to a friend, or their friend, that had a client that was looking to buy. So I did that, and then all of a sudden you're like, you've sold 5 houses in this little neighborhood.
Yeah. Now your name is something.
Yeah, and to the point where people are like, "Oh, just call him. He'll,
Mm-hmm.
he knows who the buyers are." And
Right.
it's changed. It's gotten competitive there. People kind of, that whole neighborhood, demographics have changed and stuff like that. But it's when you find something. So what separates me differently? I guess, I've been using the Ghostbusters theme. Who are you going to call when your realtor can't handle it?
Mm-hmm.
You call Pete Cunha, and it's like, not that I want to be that guy.
Right.
Kind of like the layups.
Not that
Sort
I'm
of.
calling you other real estate agent Slimer or anything like that.
See, I don't even know the
But
movie. Like, so Slimer, I don't even know what that is. But
isn't
it's
that
just,
green globby ghost thing? I don't know.
I didn't really pay attention. I fall
Yeah.
asleep during my movies.
I think I was like 12 when it first came out or something silly.
But it's just kind of like, you want a second opinion, right? And it's just going further down the rabbit hole, and I love going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
It's my first listing was a $15,000 piece of land in Jackson, that the guy was going through dialysis, and literally he had owned this piece of land. He was like, if you can get me anything for it, I just want to give the money to my kids.
Nice.
And we went down the rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
And literally the rabbit hole was, how did you get the valuation with a tax assessor? She's like, well, if you needed an acre and a half, and this was like 3/4 of an acre. So I'm like, how are you basing the valuation at 150,000? It's like, well, if you look at it and you get another half, 3/4 of an acre, you have an acre and a half. If you build a house, they're going for like 300,000. So we take half the value of what a house would cost there. And all of a sudden, that's what your tax assessment is. I'm like,
Okay.
it's got zero value
Right.
because it's only 3/4 of an acre. And it's just woods.
So does that mean they pay you property taxes?
No.
It's negative,
It doesn't
sounds.
ever work that way.
Half of nothing is
Yeah. So it wound up being that, it was adjacent to some already township natural preserve, and I was like, my recommendation at the time was just donate it, get some sort of tax credit for giving it to the state or something along those lines. He did pass away. The kids didn't wind up doing anything with it, and it's just kind of sad. But that was my first thing, and I was like, I knew more about like Jackson because I went down the rabbit hole. I'm like, how did you come up with this
Right.
$150,000 tax assessment? Why are we paying you, $3,000 a year? If
Mm-hmm.
it's there's nothing on
If there's
there.
nothing, I'm paying for nothing, right?
Yeah, and it's like I try to sell it to the neighbor and everything else, and they just didn't want it.
No.
They're like, it's already like woods. Nobody can do anything. So it's kind of like ours anyway.
Right.
So, but no, going down the rabbit hole, knowing that I always think that, it's what do I tell people? I ask them, what are your goals? Like if you were to envision where you're at in 6 months from now, what's that vision?
Yeah, where is that?
This house is sold. I'm in Florida. I'm in the pool drinking a margarita or whatever they drink down in Florida. And I'm like, all right, I'll get you there. It's like, we have a lot of connections. That's one thing that I pride. I was talking to an agent today in Miami. It was like
Mm-hmm.
we were best friends within 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And, I have a lot of people. If you're looking to move to Miami, I have a referral down there that I can send them to. Because, the reality is like people are moving out of state, out of New Jersey. There's a lot of people moving to New Jersey, but the next progression is to move out of it and go to retirement or whatever it is. You stay in New Jersey. Why? Because the beaches are awesome, school systems, the
Right.
parks.
Pizza's pretty good.
Yeah, the pizza's pretty good. The bagels are pretty good.
Bagels are good.
Chinese food a little suspect, but it's like
Yeah. Not what we're known for, but
yeah, no, because I live down south, and it's like you don't realize what like. I was like, any good pizza? And they're like, oh
yeah.
yeah, we're gonna go to Papa John's,
Oh
like
yeah.
a Pizza Hut or something. And I'm like, I've never seen people
Never.
put sauce on
I've been to Florida and was like New York pizza, and I'm like, oh, this place is gotta have good pizza. No,
a
just a,
bagel.
just a name.
Yeah, bagels. What is it, Lender's Bagels or whatever? That's not
Yeah,
that's
it's
not a bagel. Come on.
definitely not good.
Eh,
No, I like that approach you just had, and I want to circle back to that really quick because the the perception that you lead the conversation into is I think beneficial to any buyer or seller, right? When you're focused on when you ask that question, that directs their focus. Where are you in 6 months? You're taking their attention off leaving, right? You're taking their attention off the stress of selling, right? You're taking the attention off of the difficulties or challenges of buying. And I think that's important with any transaction, whether it's in sales,
right.
whether it's in real estate sales, or any kind of transactions at all. And I love that approach. So something tells you you're going to have a great answer to this next question. The next question, which is also
Is this a story time
it's the
or?
last question. Yes, it's our favorite question here at the Advisor's Advantage. And this is where we ask you, Peter Cunha, to leave us with a parting piece of pie. Now, as with most things with me, pie is an acronym. And pie stands for something profound, something inspiring, and something entertaining. Now, you can do all three, or you can do one of three. Two of three, your call. But tell us something profound, or something inspiring, and or something of entertainment.
Life's not supposed to be easy because if it was, you wouldn't appreciate what you have, right?
Mm,
And the reality is like I was telling somebody yesterday. It's like the challenge is to figure it out, right? To find that silver lining or to make something out of nothing, right? And there's answers out there. Don't get too far into your head, right?
yeah,
Because we are our best proponents, so we're also our worst proponents. And
so
one
true.
of it is, you know, listen, you got to dream,
Mm-hmm.
because nobody's going to dream for you. Nobody cares what you really do. And so thank you for putting me on the spot with that. So I'm gonna leave you with the first thing that popped into my head. It's 20-40-60 principle.
Okay.
When you turn 20, up to the age of 20, you're worried about what everybody thinks of you.
Mm-hmm.
By the time you turn 40, you should be realizing that you don't care what people think about you anymore. And by the time you
Yes.
turn 60, you realize nobody thought about you in the first place.
Yes.
So just get the fuck out of your own way. All right. It's like, that's the reality of it. We way overthink things.
Yeah.
We want to be perfect and everything because that's what, everybody tells you, that you're supposed to be, right? You're supposed to look like a sports athlete, or you're supposed to look like a model or whatever. It's just be you. Everybody else is taken. So, kind of, I remember I met this guy. Oh, I got to get, oh, this is great. I met this guy in Maui,
Okay.
and I bought a t-shirt. I went to the flea market out in Maui, and I bought this t-shirt that says, be yourself, everybody else is taken. And I started talking to the guy, and I'm like, oh, like, where did you get these t-shirts? He's like, oh, I came up with all of these. And, turns out that he has this book of quotes. And literally, you just rifle through it and you get people to read whatever the quote is and whatever they think of.
Mm-hmm.
So, over the last, I've known my wife for 10 years. So, I've had this book for about 9 years. And because we were renovating, it's somewhere in my office. I got to find it. But it's just over the years, I've just handed it to people that I thought, random strangers at conferences,
That's great.
or people that I know that are important to me. And they're, it's like you rifle through a page and you're like, I don't like that quote. And I'm like, well, if you don't like it, then rifle it again. But again, it goes back to the whole, like, you want everything to be perfect. And it's like,
Right.
I wrote in this guy's book, and the first thing that I rifled to was a Tony Robbins thing. And I was like, of course I did.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I don't know how, but
Yeah.
of course I did. And I know what this is about. And, it's one of these things where it's like, I'm always trying to do deeper dives. Here's another profound statement. It's like, you're either climbing or what is it? You can't stay stagnant.
Mm-hmm.
You're either going up the hill or down the hill.
Right.
Right. You can't just stay
Yeah,
on the hill.
flat,
right. And, it was kind of like, that was something that was really important to me. Right. So it's like, as long as I can keep going up the hill, I'll continue to do it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what the future brings. Right. And it's like, people always ask me what my goals are. Right. And it's like, listen, I love adventure. I want to do things. Right. I'm a serial kind of like dreamer / entrepreneur. As I get a little bit older in life, I realize that there's a process to these things. Like, just because you think of something doesn't mean you snap your fingers and it happens.
Right.
And that's why we're sitting here, right? That's kind of what brought us together. We're both doing this, right? We have the YouTube channels. We're trying to help each other, and it's like, it's nothing more than just sharing information. And it's like funny because I was talking to, I guess in their terms, a competitor. I was like, why don't we collaborate? Like, we live in one of the greatest like counties in Monmouth County, right? And you're affiliated to Atlantic Highlands. I'm in Belford, right? We have Middletown.
Mm-hmm.
We have like this whole coastal line, right? We have ferries that go to New York City.
So Bayshore, right?
Yeah, and I'm just like, why don't we just, rather than saying that you have Century 21 Remax Open Doors, why don't we just do a podcast or do a video together of like 3 different realtors on a high end, explaining what they love about this area? Because somebody in Brooklyn has no idea what we're talking about, right? And you're commuting an hour away anyway. Right. Why not take a ferry? And have a better quality of life.
Enjoy the ride, right?
Yeah, be on the beach.
Yes.
Don't make it a vacation. And it's like that's the beautiful part. It's and I've bumped heads with a lot of realtors where it's like, oh, it's a conflict of interest. You do too much of what I do, and I'm like, listen, I work my database. You don't know the same people that I do. And if, James, you decide to buy or sell a house and you don't use me, there's a reason for that, right? And I've had people say that to me before. I use so-and-so because they know that town better than I do, right? And I'm like, where's this town? It's in Burlington County. I'm like, yeah, hey, you should have used them. Or I would have referred them to somebody, right? I just referred somebody in Bucks County, PA. Yeah. Or Western New Jersey. I'm like, I don't know the first thing about these areas. Right. And they're like, oh, this is an up and coming area like this. I'm like, I appreciate everything that you're telling me, but why don't I put you in touch with a client so they can hear it directly from your mouth? Yeah. And, it's just, again, it's just having really good relationships. And, it's, again, every day, you just put it out there and something will happen. Does it have to be good? No. But, it's, I do believe that, what's the expression? It's, whatever you put out into the universe comes back and, unfolds. Yeah. And, I truly do believe that. Right. And it's like my mother was the best inspiration of my life. Right. It was, she loves her garden. Right. My dad loved the vegetable garden.
Right.
and my mother loved the flower garden. So it was the back
Okay.
part of the house versus the front part of the house.
All right.
And then,
And they were both on each side, right? One was in the front, one was in the back.
one was in the front, one
All
was
right.
in the back, right? So the best part of this whole story is like my dad, this hardcore, like, grew up tough.
Right.
Like my mom would try to help him in the garden. He's like, no, go play with your flowers. He's like, he's
Right.
like, leave the vegetables.
I got
to
these
me.
tomatoes. You go
Yeah,
ahead
yeah,
and get
yeah,
the
yeah. You go
dandelions.
play with your flowers, and I'll take care of this. And it's so the setup for this is that my mother would be out in the front yard, always had this beautiful garden that people would take pictures of and stuff like that. And some lady one day was like, "Oh, can you tell me, where this is?" Right. So my mother's sweating, dripping, middle summer sweat, just working on her garden, and she's like, "Well, that's kind of far. Why don't I just drive you?" Right. So she drove her to this place that was, probably a 10-minute car ride that like it would have taken
Right.
this lady to, and it's funny because I've been to Barcelona and we did the Gaudi kind of like that, the Gaudi tours or like go to
Right.
see these buildings and we didn't speak Spanish. We asked this lady, like, she's going the other direction. It's like picture asking for directions in Manhattan. Like, it's like, oh, do you know where Times Square is? Like that way. They don't even stop. Right? You just point, right?
Right.
This lady like walked 20 minutes out of her way to like show us where like this park was in Barcelona. And then she had to go back the other way. And I was just like, that was my mother.
It's back to you in folds.
Yeah. And the crazy part is like somehow this lady became friends with my mom, right? My mom would drive her to her house. Like, it's just kind of like now they have this like little friendship and it's weird, right? Because old lady, my mother, I look at her, I love you, mom, but she's like, I think of her as a little older too, right? And this lady winds up passing away and has no relatives. And somehow, like, she kind of said, hey, this is your house. And my mom didn't want it. And the state took it over and sold it at foreclosure or whatever, right?
Wow.
And it's like, so like there's stories about stuff like that, right? I've been on the beach, wearing some, I get into the kind of rockabilly sort of jackets or shirts or whatever. And
I thought you were going to say little spandex or something. And that's
no,
really where
no,
I thought
no,
you were
no, no,
going. And I was about
no,
to stop
no,
the camera because I felt like.
no, no, no. I'll do that on the next podcast. But the great part is like some guys like, I love your shirt.
Yeah.
I'm like, you want it? He goes, yeah. And I'm like, so here I am, like on 4th of July weekend, like just waiting for the fireworks. And I'm like sitting. And the guy comes back and he goes, dude, I'm like, I'm not as big as you. So I went to, like, he comes back with a sweatshirt. And he goes, I wanted to give you this sweatshirt for giving me your shirt. And I'm like, it was like this brand, Lucky 13 or whatever. And
Nice.
I'm like, dude, I literally have given the shirt off my back,
Right.
because somebody's like, drunk guy, like, oh, I love this shirt, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, cool, you want it here?
That's
yours.
it.
Yeah.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm not surprised that you went with profound, but I think you also got a little inspirational and, without question, entertaining on that one.
I don't know. As my daughter would say, sus.
Well, I thought it was entertaining.
I appreciate it.
It was very good. And I will tell you, I thoroughly enjoyed going down this rabbit hole with Peter Cunha. I want to thank you for joining us on the Advisor's Advantage.
No, I appreciate you, man.
Any parting words to our audience?
No, listen, if you literally, listen, you need help, right? If you're looking to buy a house, typically people reach out to me first because they want to look at houses, right? And the first step's really, you need a good financial advisor. You don't just get a good financial advisor, you get a great financial advisor with you and just kind of the products that you guys offer. So, I appreciate you always taking really good care of my clients because there's nothing that I can ever get better than saying, hey, one guy was like, you're 4 for 4 on your recommendations, which is,
Nice.
Your lender, your home inspector, contractor, your tile guy.
Yeah.
And you're just like, hey, listen, this is what it's about.
Right.
When you're new to the business, you don't know what attorneys, and not every attorney is the same, right? Just like not every lender is the same. And, you really do a nice job of making people not feel stupid. Because they don't, it's just, and I'm not saying stupid. It's just, sometimes they're intimidated by the whole process, and it shouldn't be that way. We like to have fun, and we like to make it a fun process because it should be exciting. It's like, what's the most exciting part? It's like for me, it's always looking at houses. That's easy, right? and then getting to the closing table because that's when you hand off the keys.
Oh yeah.
It's like taking the pictures and
Listen, I always say the real estate agent has the most fun part of the entire transaction, right? You get all attached with the emotions. You get them all like dreaming and envisioning.
yeah,
And then I got to get on the phone with them and talk about the numbers. And the numbers is always where things get a
yeah.
little, but we do our best to make that part as smooth and entertaining as possible.
And that's the great part, right? It's like because at the end of the day, it's just numbers,
Yeah.
right? And it's just like
Nothing to be afraid of.
right?
You'll find a way.
Yeah, and typically, like what I love is just like, okay, you don't qualify right now, right?
Yes.
Just because doesn't mean you don't qualify now doesn't mean
Right.
you don't qualify 3 months from now.
It's that powerful word of yet,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
3 letters, yet
There's
such a strong word.
there's not a no, it's just a not yet,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's just like here's the pathway, and this is what you need to do, and I can't tell you how many times people come back 2 or 3 years later, and then they're like, okay, now we're ready,
Now we're ready.
right? And it's just like, okay, this is the time.
Yeah.
I'm dealing with a client now, right? He just, last year we were looking at condos. Now we're looking at houses because his, things changed for him. He was more fortunate. He's making a little bit more money, and that's the beauty of it, right? And it's like, I always, I'm not looking for the person. I'm just looking to help people, right?
Yeah.
Because whether they buy now or 2 years from now, and I know a lot of realtors like, oh, like, when are you looking to buy a house? Like, if it's anything more than 6 months, like, okay, next,
Right.
right? And it's
Oh,
just
on top
like,
of that. Yet I look at that as pipeline annuity, right?
fair,
That's what we call that here.
yeah,
Peter, you've been fantastic. And I want to thank you and give a big shout out. Peter Cunha, Open Doors Realty, one of the largest real estate agents in the area. And I mean in body and soul.
yeah,
Your wealth of knowledge is fantastic. The advantage with working with Peter is clearly your energy, your wisdom, and those you surround yourself with. As you said, it's everything. And what's the old saying? Your net worth is determined by your network, right?
yeah.
And you've definitely built yourself around a strong network. So I want to thank you for being here. I want to say thank you for tuning in to the Advisor's Advantage with James Murphy, where we are here giving you the advantage you need for the experience you want. See you on the next show.